Happy Tuesday night, everybody! Welcome to the 5th episode of Piano Star Masterclass. I am your host, Brian Lin, a professional pianist and a piano teacher. Ever since I graduated from Juilliard a few years ago, making piano education accessible to everybody has been one of my main goals. And that's why I created the series, the Piano Star Masterclass. It starts with a 30-minute interview with a professional pianist, followed by an hour of live-streamed piano lessons taught by that pianist. During the live stream, you can ask us any questions in the chat, and we will do our best to answer them. But remember, you can also sign up to be a performer. We have some great classes coming up. Our April classes are all full, so hurry up and sign up before classes in May are gone too. Piano Star is all about giving piano students virtual performing opportunities. So besides the masterclass, we also have the Piano Star Showcase featuring piano performances by young pianists from age 7 to 12. Now, the judges, including myself, have finished our review of the video applications, and I've got to say, we've seen some mind-blowing performances from these kids. The showcase will be live streamed on our website on May 1st at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, so don't miss out. Now, I'd like to introduce our guest teacher today. He is a Steinway artist and a Fulbright scholar. He is internationally recognized for his artistry as a recitalist, orchestral soloist, and spiritual recording artist. He's given acclaimed performances in prestigious venues across 4 continents, including New York's Alice Tully Hall, Sydney Opera House, Rome's Stadio Olimpico, and the Beijing Concert Hall. As an educator and juror, he has presented lectures throughout the United States, Canada, and Asia, and served on the jury panel of the 2019 Friends List International Competition in China, the 2020 Singapore International, and the 2020 Paris Vivace International Piano Competitions. A recent graduate of the coveted Doctor of Music degree from the Juilliard School in New York City, he has joined the Tianjin Juilliard School, Juilliard's first branch campus, as the youngest professor on the faculty himself, teaching solo, piano, and music history in the pre-college and graduate divisions. Aside from teaching, he is also an active member of the Tianjin Juilliard Ensemble, the university's all-faculty chamber group. So everybody, without further ado, please join me in welcoming our guest today, Alvin Zhu.
Hello.
Hi, Alvin. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm so happy to be part of this wonderful series. I'm
Great.
from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Right. How is it? How is it over there? You're doing good during this quarantine?
I'm doing all right. Spending some time with my parents. It's not as bad here, so fingers crossed that it stays that way. But,
That's great.
My hope and prayers to everybody and all throughout the world.
Great. At least you've got a beautiful piano behind you to keep you company, right?
I do. I'm very lucky.
That's great. All right. So our topic today, let's just jump right in, right? So it's about learning a new piece, right? So growing up, I was wondering, can you talk a little bit about your own experience with learning new pieces? Have you always been a quick learner?
It's funny. I wouldn't say I'm particularly a quick learner, but I would say I just always had that sort of like the perseverance, almost to an obsessive degree, that if I set my mind to something, I wouldn't let it go, and I would just keep doing it until I was almost exhausted or just completely frazzled, right? And so I would say, especially for piano, that would be the case. I wouldn't say I'm a very quick learner, but I definitely would spend a lot of hours just out of free will and interest and just sort of motivation that I want to get something done.
Gotcha. Is that why you've sort of figured out the secrets to learning new music? Because you've always tried to figure out a faster way to learn, maybe?
Probably. You know what? It's so funny. In the past, I've learned so many other instruments. I've played violin, viola, drum set, and guitar. And those things, I think just having piano as this sort of first instrument that started everything, it makes things so much easier, right?
Right.
But then when you go back to learning on the piano, it's such a complex instrument, and the music, albeit it's endless, and it continues to grow. I think um, as a pianist, and I'm sure too, the bulk of what we do is alone, right?
Right.
And we need to figure things out by ourselves, and really kind of get used to that sort of isolation, so to speak. And in all that time, right, and all that effort, I think when we are sort of, putting all that time, I think it's very natural for us to be like, okay, you know what? Maybe let's try something new, something different, and see if this works, right? And by no means do I believe that my method is like the method, right? Because I know everybody learns in a very unique way, right? Playing making art, right? Making music itself is such a personal thing, right?
Right.
So again, these things may work for you, it might not, right? I'm here today wanting to just tell you what I think works for me, and
And that's
hopefully that'll start jogging some minds and stuff.
and that's great. That's exactly the point of the Piano Star Masterclass. Is we bring in all all kinds of experts on various subjects, and then I truly believe in the wisdom of the mass, of all kinds of perspectives rather than just one. So I think that's great that you are bringing your own from your own experience and your expertise to bring your method in. So I was wondering, have you seen in your years of learning and teaching, have you seen some common mistakes that people make when they're learning a new piece? Perhaps they're not just taking longer than they should.
Oh yeah. I'm probably like suspect number one. But yeah, I would say one of the most dangerous things anybody could do really is to just plunge into the music and to just read note by note by note by note. And from
And I
personal
for some
experience,
reason I feel like that's what 80%, 90% of people
oh,
does
oh,
do. Yeah.
been there, done that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And once we see, I think the biggest danger with that is we start right from the beginning prioritizing something that, of course should be a priority, but it shouldn't be the first priority, right? So because we just look at notes, okay, well, definitely I got to play the right notes, right? And then it's all about notes. It's all about notes, right? And so that's the one thing. And I'll get into some of the tips that I suggest
Right.
as we go on, right? But
Right.
yeah, that's definitely one of the big ones, to just sort of jump in without anything,
Right.
go in cold turkey.
Right. That's definitely one of the things that I've noticed in my students, or myself when I was younger too, where I would take the notes first and then disregard everything else, and then slowly put everything else in. And I've learned over the years that that's not optimal. So
Oh yeah, it's double the work, right? Because you have
exactly.
right, you learn all the notes, great, right? And then you have to go back and then like redo everything because you didn't
Exactly.
play it the way you wanted, right? And so it's why?
Exactly.
So
So yeah, I'm sure our audience is dying to know right now. What can they do? What can they do? What are the 3 steps, right? As we put in the title, what are the 3 steps that one can take in learning a new piece?
I'm glad you asked, Brian.
Right.
So the 3 things that I've sort of tried to find catchy titles to. So the first of the 3 is called Explore, right? And then the second one is Divide and Conquer. And then the third one I say is a Reevaluation, right? And so when I get into these 3, so basically, what do I mean by explore, right? I think we can kind of sort of guess what that kind of means, right? We it's not just that we look into the music, right? But we treat the music as really a map, right? Think of it this way: we as interpreters, right? The first steps we do with any new music, we're kind of like, the pioneers, the expeditioners. We're going, to uncharted territory, and luckily we have a map, right, which is the score, right? So at least we know, okay, well, this is, the ballpark, right? This is like if I'm going to explore this part, right? If I'm surveying the land, right? At least I have this handy dandy guide, right?
Right.
And what better, right, than the map that the composer gave us, right? So the composer, told us everything he or she, could have done, given the notation, And actually, we can think of it this way: interpretation starts where notation ends, right? So again, all the composers that we're so used to playing, right, and so used to hearing and studying, right, within this system, that's how best they could express it, right? And of course, it's not a perfect system, right? And because it's not perfect, it leaves so much room for our interpretations and our spins and our opinions on it, right? So I would say the explore part of it, right, actually doesn't need the piano, right? And I saw that Nico was on a couple weeks ago.
Yes, he
Saying,
was.
how important mental practice is, right?
Right.
And I definitely agree. And I would just like to add, I mean, when you learn a piece, I mean, like that sort of mental stage, that mental preparation and dimension is very, very important as well, right? Because in this sort of like phase, so to speak, I get to really look into many, many different dimensions of the piece, right? Let's say I wanted to, look at the history of it, right? The structure of it, the composer, right? When did they write this? The period, right? All of these things coincide with how much we know and how well we can prepare before we even look at the first note, right? Because I mean, like there are things that we can learn just from history itself that will help us when we interpret, right? I mean, just a very small example. There are so many different dances in three, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mazurka, Polonaise, waltz, right? Sarabande, countless, right? But then, I mean, if I was playing a sarabande and I was playing a waltz, there's completely different styles without me even looking at the notes, right? So there are things that we would know if we did, some research, or if we explored some of that, right? And then the other thing is, now exploring also means that through this map, we get to choose the right or the most efficient route, right, to go through this, let's say, forest or this land, right? And what I mean by that is, we get to, decide what happens. We get to plan, right? Let's say this phrase, I want to do it this way, right? And then, okay, next phrase, I can look at it measure by measure, phrase by phrase, section by section, passage by passage, right? And so that really sort of, it allows you so much time to really get to know the piece before you really get to know the piece, right? So it gives you sort of like a synopsis.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say the purpose of the explore phase is.
Gotcha. So you would, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Just to get as much info and to get as much artillery and ammo ready for the hunt or the surveying, right? So that you know what to do, or at least you have an idea of what to do.
Gotcha. So you would actually recommend doing this, I guess, the survey of the music before you even start playing the first note. Is that what you're saying? Gotcha.
Definitely, yes. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Definitely.
So yeah, I definitely, I've always had to spend a lot of time telling my students after they've learned the song, the piece, that look at the big picture. What
Exactly.
you're only thinking a note at a time, and I feel like doing what exactly exploring, like you said, would really help. Doing it before, I think that's actually a very new concept that I've heard, and
Okay.
I'll definitely try that with my students as well. So why don't you go
Yeah.
on to the
Definitely.
why don't you go on to the second step? Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So then the second phase I coin as divide and conquer, right? And the reason why I chose this instead of just like conquer or to just like dive in is because of that danger that I addressed earlier, right? When you sort of bite off more than you can chew, then it's very easy for you to be overwhelmed and maybe deterred and maybe, eventually give up on the piece, right? And none of us would like that, right? No matter how challenging a piece is, we can always learn something from it, right? And then to give up is always a very heartbreaking thing to do, right? So I would say when I say divide and conquer, it really is to take the piece into digestible pieces, right? And instead of, let's say, okay, well, today I have to do like the whole thing, right? To instead to focus on smaller fragments, right? Measure to measure, phrase to phrase, section to section, passage to passage, right? You can do it that way much more effectively, right? And then the other thing I've realized, and this may just be me, but my mind is certainly not a computer, and I can't perform so many different actions, and I can't multitask as well as like any old computer, right? And that includes processing information, right? I mean, when you look at it, not just playing piano, but any instrument, right? Anything actually anything that involves coordination and motor skills, right? Those are completely like completely complex sort of actions, and to couple that with dynamics, with character, with rhythm, with balance, with sound and articulation, everything, right? And then movement, posture. Oh my gosh, there's just way too much to think of all at once, right? And my old method was just to do, okay, well, I'm going to think about all those in due time, right? I'm still going to learn it, right? But then, yeah, I always felt that was just counterintuitive and counterproductive most of the time, right? And so what I like to say is, like essentially divide and conquer means setting goals, right? Every day you could have a tiny goal, right? Like for example, if you only had 20 minutes to practice today, right? Or if you only had if you only had 20 or 30 minutes to practice today, right? Would it be wise to just run the piece, right? Let's say the piece is 15 minutes long, right? And let's say as a pianist, right, you have like more than just one piece, right? You can't just be expected to be a one-piece player all your life, right? So let's say you just ran that piece and it took up half of your like allotted practice time, right? Again, you probably wouldn't learn too much from that one run through, right? And equally, if you're learning a new piece, right, like half an hour may seem, oh, okay, yeah, I have enough time. Oh, when you're learning a new piece, half an hour flies, right? It'll be over before you even know it, right? And so it's really important to just set manageable goals, right? And for me, I used to do, I found maybe a little bit later on that like I'm much more comfortable, or no, I'm much more satisfied actually, having a comfortable amount of time to do a smaller project than an uncomfortable amount of time to do a bigger project, right? Because and that kind of just it gets into the habit of saying like I'd rather get one phrase very good as part of this day's goal than to have like a whole section kind of mediocre, right? And when you end a day with a mediocre passage, the next day you're like, okay, well, now I got to do this again. Did I retain any of it? Blah, 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 right? And so it's another, and then it just it just mounts and mounts and mounts, right? So I definitely think divide and conquer, like in a nutshell, it just means set easier I wouldn't say easier, but set manageable goals, right? That within 20 to 30 minutes, right, you can get something done, right?
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
by uncomfortable amount of time, you mean like you don't want people to, spend too much time on too much stuff. Is that right? Like you don't want people to um to go through the whole piece. Maybe spend a lot of time and really getting nothing done. Is that
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
would you
Yeah.
recommend that teachers, when they, I guess for our younger teachers out there, um, that they spend, more time on smaller passages in their lessons with their students? Would you suggest that they do that as well, or would you suggest the teachers, go through the whole piece in a lesson?
Oh, yeah, you know what? And this is actually, I think this is very biased because this is how I teach.
Uh,
But I'm much more of a sort of like in the zone type of teacher, in which I'd rather focus on much smaller material, but have them really understand what the language is, what they're striving for, what they could do, what they probably shouldn't do, like things like that, right? Rather than hearing the whole piece, right? And I think it helps in a lot of ways because one, it shows the students, oftentimes it shows the students just how specific and how much higher the standard really is when you only focus on like a tiny segment of the piece, right? And it also, it allows you much more time to you as the teacher, right, to sort of reimagine how you like approach this piece, right? Because you're spending a little bit more time, you can actually bounce off ideas from one another, right? And then in the end, the students, right? The students will see what. Okay, well, not only that. Okay, well, in this short amount of time, like there's so many things that I can think about. But then it paves the way for okay, well, then the next lesson, right, or the next few lessons, this is the standard that I need to think about by myself when I do practice, right? This is what I have to think about, because oftentimes, I mean, when we hear from beginning to the end, right, as a teacher, um, there's a lot of things that just because we need to let them play it through, we sacrifice a lot of things, right? And in the long run, after 5, 10, 15 lessons, maybe on the same piece, which is not really recommended, right? But if it goes up until that point, right, then it's kind of like, okay, well, today I'm not going to let this slide, and then it becomes a little bit inconsistent, in my opinion, right? So I'd much rather, in let's say in a 1 hour lesson, right, I would probably, I would let them play it through once, right, just so that they have the performance sort of aspect of the lesson, and then really sort of just go increment by increment, phrase by phrase, until I can either see that they sort of understand what I'm trying to get them to do, right? Or that we have like an artistic exchange and we have a back and forth, and I think that's much more productive than saying like, okay, well, okay, you rushed here, and then okay, here you need more pedal, but that can be a little bit superficial sometimes,
Right. That I
not
to
entirely
come
too productive.
100% agree with that. That's also my style of teaching as well. Sometimes I would spend a long time on just getting a tiny section right, because
Yeah,
I also feel like that's more important than just getting
definitely,
the whole
definitely.
piece,
Mm.
mediocre. So so after divide and conquer, you have re-evaluation. Can you
Yeah,
elaborate
yeah.
on that?
Okay. Yeah, this is a little bit hard to explain. Um, well, actually, it's not really. So reevaluation is basically what you did versus what you want, right? It's a reflection of what happened here, right? Now we had a planning stage, right? The explore, right? In which we mapped out what we wanted to do. And then divide and conquer is kind of like the stage where we put that to action, right? Now it could be fast or it could be slow. Like it depends on the comfort and the skill of the player, right? And then the last pillar, right? The last stage, reevaluate is kind of just being your own critic, right? And that kind of just means um, like, did it work, right? Like, did what I do match up to what I want, right? And then, I mean, in life, right? We're always confronted with the things that we do versus the things that we want to do, or the things um, that we anticipated would happen, right? And I think it's a very important thing to sort of to put our minds around, because let's face it, not everything that we plan in the beginning will be the plan that we stick to, right? And oftentimes, the first plan that we make, it's a rough draft, right? It's a rough draft to say the least. And then after you test it out, right? And after you sort of reflect and see, okay, does this actually work? Do I even like it? Right? Then, like, the reevaluation phase is you being at your harshest, right? You have to, shine the mirror right into your face, and you have to, face the fact, okay, is this what I want? And if it's not, right, then we have the beautiful moment in which we go back to the drawing board. We think, we readjust, and sort of, make a new thing. And then we test it out, and then we see if it's to our liking or not, right? So I think it's in a nutshell, are we happy with our choices, and are we satisfied? Right?
Gotcha. And for on that point, I find some students, some especially young, beginner to intermediate pianists, they have a hard time listening, knowing exactly what they want, and they, in a nutshell, they don't know how they sound. They don't know what they want, and they don't know that they played, how they played. What suggestions would you give them to improve, I guess, their ability to evaluate themselves, their ability to listen, essentially?
Yeah. Hey, I mean, we've all been there, right? And I certainly remember the times where I'm like, wait, like, I thought I sounded pretty good. Like, well, what's my teacher talking about, right? And
Definitely
so
been
I
there,
think,
done that.
yeah,
Right.
so
Yeah.
I think it's very healthy to start off very innocent, let's say, maybe naive, right? And then, yeah, as you start, maturing, right? As you start, amassing more knowledge and more influence, right? Then you have an easier time to criticize, right? Now, I think, like, another word for criticizing ourselves, and actually what reevaluation will eventually do for us as pianists and as artists, is that is what will make our taste, right? Now, everybody has taste, right? Or everybody has a certain, extent to taste, right? Now, some people may say, okay, well, that guy has absolutely no taste. Okay, well, that may be your opinion of that guy's lack of taste, right? But to that person, no, those are his preferences. That's his taste, right? And then a lot of how we reflect and a lot of how we look at our own playing will reflect and will build up our own tastes, right? So what better way to, to sort of bolster and enhance our own tastes, by really just learning more, right? Listening to a lot of recordings, reading about the composers, reading about the piano, reading about, things that happen in the art world, right? Be inspired by everything, right? And it doesn't have to be the piano. I mean, art is all like interwoven, interconnected, right? So I often tell my students, especially if they're playing, let's say, like a concert paraphrase of something, right? If you're going to play Liszt Rigoletto, right? Well, you better know what Rigoletto is, right? And you better go at least like know what Verdi's language is, before you even attempt to do that here, right? or watch some ballets or operas or everything, and then that will like little by little it'll help us kind of piece together our likes and our dislikes, right? Whether you're aware or not, right? There will be times where it's like, okay, well, in the beginning, it could be just like, oh, okay, well, both are fine, you know, I'm indifferent, right? But then as the more you do it, right, the more you'll find yourself leaning, right? And leaning is a good first stage, right? When you lean in one direction, that means, okay, I'm more, engaged with this. And then naturally, you'll probably go seek out things that are related to this, and then you can start building your branch and your tree and stuff like that, right? So I would say a great way to really be honest with yourself, right, is you need to be able to listen to a lot of people, right? You have to be willing to listen before you can speak, right? Just like figuratively speaking, right? To play with your own voice, right? And in the end of the day, I mean, like I said earlier, music is a complete, like a super immensely personal thing, right? And I mean, you can spend your life uh, looking at others, right? And you can spend your life striving to be like somebody else. And at the end of the day, I mean, the most powerful thing is to be yourself, right? And to find yourself, to find your voice, right? That's why we have like billions of pianists, right? It's not that they all want to play like one person, right? But it's that we want to in this one act that connects us all. We're trying to find our own sort of voice, right? And we don't want to be, alone, right? We want to be together, but then very individual, right? So I think the more you listen, right, the more you learn, and the more you sort of uh, do things like that, the more honest you will be with how you approach the piano, how you approach learning, practicing, listening, and really appreciating music. I think that's what's the core objective of reevaluation, right? It's not just so that, okay, well, great, he can play the Berg Sonata like in a week, great, right. I think it's much more meaningful than that, right? Because when you can honestly look at yourself and strive for even better while appreciating everything around you, I think that's what makes uh, a genuine and influential artist.
That's fascinating. I think that's very, very important. That was a very important point that you made about be listening more and being yourself. Um, Time flies really fast. It's already over our 30-minute limit,
Oh,
but we have our next performer in the room. But
fantastic.
before that, I just want to address one of our audience's question because I see it.
Mhm.
So maybe if you could spend just 1 minute. I know we're already over time,
Sure thing.
but um, uh,
Of course.
T. Michelle asked, anything you'd like parents of piano students to know? So I guess, just very quickly, what can, I guess, parents of piano students, what can they do to help their kids, achieve the same goals, I guess?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's a that's a very, very good question, and it's a very, hot button topic, especially in China. Um, but I want to say that I've been extremely lucky, to have my parents be, the guiding forces, and the rocks, right, in my life. Um, and because I come from a musical family, that's besides being my like uh, um, just impenetrable support system, they, have facilitated so much of my own musical growth, right? Taking me to concerts, lessons, finding opportunities for me to perform. I mean, those are all just insanely important for nurturing students, right? Now, but then see, there's a fine line, right? Because I've also seen where parents, are, completely. like overboard, you know, in which they sort of make all the judgments for the students, right? Now, of course, as a kid, right? As a kid, you don't really have the capacity to make informed decisions yet, right? So that's where the parents can always support, right? But then I've seen instances where, for example, because of how competitive this field is, you know, the parents sort of, you know, thrust the kids into things that may not be the best exposure for the kids, you know. And I would just say, like, it's definitely difficult, but being the support, right? Being the best cheerleaders, you know, being the people that will, lay everything on the line to, you know, get them to the concert venue, or all these things. Those are the parents that are like God sent. I mean, amazing, right? But definitely also, see, the parents also need to remember that once the students have a teacher, right, then they're part of that teacher's sort of wing, right? And sometimes I've seen also that parents like to go against the teacher's wishes, and then, you know, there's this whole fiasco and stuff like that, right? So definitely, it's a very fine line to tread, right? But always just have faith in your child, right? Have faith in the ambitions and the motivations that come from him or her, right? Rather than your own, as a parent, your own ambitions and your own dreams, right? I think that's the most important thing. And whether or not the kid becomes a pianist or like a violin or a professional musician, right? The things that they went through, right? With the overwhelming support from the parents. I mean, the kids are always, they've been changed from the get-go, right? And they'll never forget how much music will never leave their lives. You know, I mean, I've had a lot of friends come up to me before saying, like, man, you know, I studied an instrument when I was in, you know, middle school and high school, but then I quit, you know, and then now I'm like 30, I'm like 30 something years old, and then, like, now I just regret, right? Because now when I'm trying to learn, it's completely different. I used to play it so well, you know, and I think that's a big thing, you know. Like, nobody ever wants to regret, you know, and it really takes a very strong but a really flexible and a really faithful parent or a set of parents to really, you know, show that music is not something that, you know, is, you know, like 100% made in like a fiery goblet, right? And it's not just work and work and you can get there, right? Music is something that is, you know, it depends on how well or how fast or how slow the individual can bloom, right? And some people don't bloom until they're a little bit older. Some people bloom very young, right? But then for them, it's about maintaining it rather than chasing it, right? So yeah, it's definitely a hard line to tread, but to be supporting, to be understanding, to be flexible, and to really just have faith, you know, because sometimes we don't really see the end result because we're kind of ants, right? And we're not seeing it from the sky. So that's my
Gotcha.
take on it.
Thank you so much for spending so much time and explaining this and going into so much detail.
My pleasure.
Right.
My pleasure.
And of course, thank you for our audience who asked this question. Feel free to ask more questions as we go on to the masterclass portion. With that said, we're 10 minutes over, so let's better hurry up and get to the masterclass session. We have our first performer. His name is Andrew. And he will be playing, let me just get him in. He will be playing Beethoven's Sonata, Opus 110, third movement. So
fantastic.
And he has said that he can start from the middle if you want. So I believe the whole movement
he wants to play
is 10 minutes, but up to you guys. So I'll leave it up to you guys. I'll unmute him. Hi, Andrew. Can you hear us?
Hi, I can.
All right.
Hi, Andrew.
Yes, you are.
I'm sideways.
Very nice.
You're
to meet
sideways.
you.
Yes.
Okay, one moment.
All right. So this happens almost every time. So people need the setting is just to. I think you need to unlock your screen. Yeah. There we go.
Sorry.
Perfect. All right. I'll leave it to you guys.
All righty.
All right.
Thanks, Brian.
Hello.
Hi, Andrew. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Doing well. Okay. Yeah. So like Brian said, wherever you want a little bit more help on, I'd be happy to listen. Right. So wherever you want to start. Okay.
Starting from the second half of Beethoven 110, the last movement.
Sure. Okay.
Okay.
Sure thing. Very good. Very good, Andrew. Very good. Okay. Things that I liked your composure, right? And as far as I can tell through these, through Zoom, right? I can tell that you know what sounds you are trying to aim for, okay? And so I think those things are very, very admirable, especially when you're playing, right? Now, what I want to do is have a little bit more of your ownership of the piece, right? I feel like you're still sort of, it feels like you're still interpreting this piece, and it's not yet become part of your molecular structure yet. Okay, so what I mean by it is when we get to this sort of thing, right? When we have, can you hear me when I play?
Yes, I can.
Okay, okay, yeah. So this theme, right? Right. This is our sort of second time hearing it, right?
Yeah.
Right. Before we had this what was the key? But I remember it was a lot of flats. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. So perfect. Okay. So when we get here, right? Because this is in sort of, I don't want to say that G minor is necessarily a shinier key, right? But G minor is a little bit more of a sorrowful key, right? When we think of G minor things, right? When we think of the Mozart G minor, right? Or any really G minor, that key itself is completely expressive. It's sorrowful, right? So I think when we get here, it's not like the beginning in which we have sort of hopelessness, right? There's a difference between hopelessness and sorrowful, right? When you're sorrowful, yeah, okay, there is a little bit of hopelessness, but if anything, you're just very, sad, right? So I think here we need to think about the balance a little bit, right? This thing, right? It's in a very low register, and you have three notes that are pretty close to each other, right? Other composers would have probably made that type of spacing, right? So that you right, so you get to hear the strings reverberate. But because it's so close, right? It's a solid thing, right? It feels solid, right? So when we have this, right? I know he writes piano, right? But we need a chord to that sound, because this is a long note that stretches over 1, 2 before this. And then we go up. Right? So actually, it should feel like you have so much sadness that you can't even sing it out, right? Look at how many rests Beethoven writes. Rest, 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 and then more rest, rest, right? It's almost as if you can't get your words out. Oh, beautiful, nice. We have a screen. Yeah, right. It's almost as if you're trying to say something, but you're losing your breath, right? And you can't even almost muster the energy to speak it out, right? So can we try can we try it one more time? I want it to feel like it's one thing you're trying to get out, right? Like saying like, I just lost my home, right? But instead of like this being one phrase, and then this is another thing, and then this is another thing, right? I want you to be like, this is no longer my home, right? It took so long for me to tell you that one sentence, right? But notice how much more heartfelt that is, rather than saying, I no longer have a home. I don't live here anymore. Blah, 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 right, right? So it's, yeah. Can we try it?
Yeah.
Okay, good, Andrew. Really, really good. Just a tiny thing. What do we do when we see diminuendo?
When we see diminuendo,
What do we do right at that spot?
right at that
What?
spot,
Yeah. What do we do? Just a rule of thumb. What do we do when we see diminuendo?
we start out louder and play softer.
Exactly. When you see diminuendo, play loud. Okay, because when you have because usually diminuendo is the loudest part in the phrase, right? Now conversely, what do we do at crescendo?
Soft to loud.
Exactly. The crescendo means you just play soft so that you have room to grow, right? Diminuendo, you start loud so you have room to decay, right? So it's the same thing here, right? From here to, this should be excruciatingly soft. And then we're growing this, right? The re is not necessarily that much less than the E flat, right? But this, because the diminuendo is at here, right? This is when we get softer. And then basically within one beat, right? You go from, because the crescendo is there, right? So then the crescendo takes a lot, much smaller sort of thing. And then we keep going. This is, right? We keep going until we strike that diminuendo. The diminuendo is the loudest part of that phrase, right? Okay, can we try that one more time, starting from here? Beautiful, right? I think that's much better in a sense that it now feels like one long idea has passed, right? And actually, you know, it's funny. A lot of times when I give concerts, you know, sometimes the best praise is, oh, it felt so short, right? Now, why is that a great sort of praise, right? Oh, that feels so short. It's because when a phrase happens well, time flies, right? When something doesn't, you know, really happen well, right? If something, you know, drags along, then the audience really feels it's like, oh man, why is this taking so long, right? It feels longer than it is, right? So when we have a phrase, see, when you first played it, it was noticeable that I felt sort of lost in the phrase and I didn't really, like it felt longer than it should have been. But when you just played it, I was taken by your sort of long range thinking that I didn't even register that it took the same amount of time that as when you played it before, right? So that's the magic of really planning your phrases. Okay. Okay. Good. So let's go on. When we and then can we start from here? Right. This is a very interesting chord, right? Because before we kind of went from this three note molecule, right? Here, and then when we come back, now we have this 4-note molecule. It's thicker, right? And not only do we not start on a fifth, we start on a third, right? So it's already sunken even lower, right? The expression, we've already announced that we no longer have a home. Now we're in the thick of it, right? Now we're pulling at the heartstrings, right? Now we're really in the mud. Now we're at least for this one beat it is, until a raising, right? The 6th degree is a raising sort of, right? And then we're raising for how many measures? 1, 2. Basically, I would say 2.5, because I want to hear. Yeah, right. And actually, you have the choice of, let's say, because Beethoven only wrote the crescendo until here, right? You have the option of doing this part receding, right? So you can do right? You have the option, right? But then again, would that be a smart option? Because next he writes a double piano. So then if we play that soft, then we sacrifice the contrast, right? So maybe you would want to do more and then right, less, okay? Can we try that part? Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so what does Beethoven do here, right? Right when you have this beautiful chord, you have this 1, 2, 3, 2, right? He kind of has this mini hemiola thing here, right? So he had, and then we, right? So I think, I mean, that's about as interesting as the left hand can get. Like given the circumstance here, right? So I would definitely bring that a little bit out, right? And when I say bring out, I don't necessarily mean play it louder, right? But just so that you're aware that the harmonic rhythm changed, you can leave it a little bit more of a, you can expand the time around it. So you can do 1, 2, and then go forward. Okay, that's what you can do. Okay, and then again, and then poco crescendo. We start this again super soft. Okay, can we just start right on the poco crescendo? Good. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Very good. And then I trust you know how to do the rest of that phrase. I want to hear a little bit more of this sort of this thing, right? Because this is a very peculiar thing, right? On the piano, it right, and And there's part of me that wants to give you the benefit of the doubt because we're on Zoom right now, right? But I want to make sure that this thing is kind of like the reverberation, right, of the entire orchestra at this point, right? Let's say like in the beginning it was, you know, a string quartet, right? And then now the second stands come in, and then the third stands, and then the fourth stand, right? And then full orchestra, right? So I want to feel, especially after this sort of torrent of nothing, of this chord is very, very interesting, right? This should be just a glimmer of sunshine at daybreak, right? It's been the night so far. This is a glimmer of sunshine. But then, yeah, but again, don't give anything away. This should be super soft. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right? And notice it's always on the third beat, on the third group. No, the third beat of each 3-note group, right? It's always ba, 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 right? So actually these notes, we need to always feel that they're upbeats, that they're not downbeats, right? So it shouldn't feel like this.
Yeah.
Right? I want you to then see, and actually this helps when you count inside, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, right? And actually, physically, my hand is very loose in the wrist, and I'm not playing down into the keys.
Okay.
I'm playing in the direction of this blackboard, right? So actually, with the pedal, you do this sort of motion, right? So in a sense, my hand. Can I see it? Good. Yeah. So you're basically sliding into the keys, right? And then with each motion, right, you not only count each upbeat, right, but you get more and more sound, right? And just a tiny tip, what you can do in the beginning, right, because the notes don't actually change, right, but your voicing can change. You can voice this first with the outer voices, right? So more this, right? And then as you get louder, your middle voices can get louder, right? And then when we get the re, right, then we can really, you know, pile on the thickness, so to speak, right? And then again, this diminuendo, this is the loudest of that phrase, right? This, and then you go softer. And then from here, it's a complete shift in tempo. Right? Okay. Can we just try maybe these things? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Here. Much better, right? Now I felt, yeah, just don't forget when we get to the last one, right? This one should be very full, right? Almost as if all 90 instruments at the end of this, they all play this one unison note, that they've all concentrated to this note. And then the nucleus dissolves. Okay? So maybe right from here, and then go on. beautiful. Okay, now I don't have too much to say about the fugue. I know it's very difficult, especially with the inverted subject in this iteration, right? But I do want you to feel a little bit more the difference between short notes and long notes, right? And actually, we do this in Bach all the time, right? When we actually almost have like an unspoken rule in the longer notes are our destinations, right? We go to the ba ba da da dum ba ba da 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 ba, right? And then the smaller, like the shorter note values are our transitions, right? They're the journey to those destinations, right? So what do I mean by that? So this is because they're all long notes, right? We can have sort of like a more swinging fashion, right? They're all very important. But then this is the first short note, right? This can have a little bit more of a moving sort of a character, right? And then, but then this note is long, right? So every time we go to a long note, so this is long, this is short, this is long, short, short, long, right? So that we, I don't want you to super exaggerate it, right? We're not swinging on vines in the jungle, right? But as long as we are aware that the sound is different from a long note, right? A destination note versus a journeying note, right? I think it'll make a lot of these things sound much better, right? Right now, you're playing everything beautifully, right? But there is a tiny, part of this that is a bit thick sometimes, right? And the thickness comes from kind of prioritizing everything rather than the things that are not really that important, right? So I would rather you actually, can we start where it has a little bit more voices? Can we start when we get to here? Yeah. Okay, good. Right now, okay, I know it's very difficult, right? But the inner voice, right? This actually, this always reminds me of Star Wars for some reason, right? But see, this thing is actually, I mean, of course, it gives us that suspense because we're moving from this, right? So, but then these notes, right? It's not that three notes are all important, right?
Yeah.
I think it's this, the first of the slow. Yeah. That's a little bit more important because that'll give us that sort of it's almost like an injection, right? It injects us with something, right? But as soon as we hear it, back off, right? No longer do we need to hear that, right? Because then it makes things thicker because this person now comes in, right? And then again, right? So the more we think in terms of things coming in and receding, right? And really only having to do, having to really just contribute that sort of like 1 second of attention and then peeling away, right? I want you to, yeah, I think that's a better way. Can we try from there? Yeah, that's much better. Yeah, now that actually has, like, it felt like it was in flight, right? And things were getting much more excited on a sort of, not in a busy way per se, right? But in a very thriving sort of way, right? And I think that's what we need to recreate, especially in this last fugue, right? The fugue has to always feel like it's full of life, right? You're creating an ecosystem with all sorts of different animals, critters, plants, everything, right? And how they interact is based on, how suitable the environment is, right? If there's a bunch of, like I don't know, if there's a bunch of radiation, okay, well, everything's gonna die, right? So we need to, thin things out so that certain things we can appreciate, right? You're walking through the swamp, okay, well, of course there's like yucky algae everywhere, but there's a one lone tulip, right? And you see it at, it's gorgeous, right? And that happens a lot in this thing, right? And then the other thing is, we need to know when we've built up something and then we're allowed to build something new, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be one giant trajectory from this all the way up until the end, right? We have different spots that we decide to build, this part of the sandcastle, and then, okay, and now we have this part to build, right? And so Beethoven marks that sometimes, especially with his tempo markings, right? And then the shift in texture, right? Especially when you go high, that versus right? So we have a change in texture. So then that leads us to, thinking, okay, well, maybe I can, start something new here. Okay, can we try some of that? Do you want to try from the Meno Allegro?
Okay.
Yeah, okay, that was good. We need a little bit more of a preparation into it, right? Now, all of that was fine. And then, right? So actually all of these things, right? All of these things are sort of, they're kind of like the background things to this line. And then, right? That's what we need to hear, okay? And lead up to that, right? So that it doesn't just feel, oh, suddenly it's faster.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's basically what I wanted to tell you about in this one. And I know we're running out of time, so for this fugue, it's definitely about how much you can, make things still thrive even though a lot of things are going on, right? And that really just means you have to isolate things that you want the audience to hear, right? The audience, oftentimes if we don't choose what we want to hear, the audience will hear none of it, right? And that's the paradox, right? You're playing all these notes, but if we don't choose what they want to hear, they don't really hear all the notes. They kind of just hear none of the notes, right? They just hear a mass, and then they just think, oh man, like, why is this piece still going on? Okay, so definitely my biggest tip for this one is, right, to always know what you want the audience to hear, right? And to be a little bit thinner, especially when you're carving out and building your structures, so that it's easier for you to pick things out, right? Because everything else is kind of hushed, and I don't want to say sluggish. They're still very thriving, right? But it's just not in the forefront, right? And that way, I think it's going to make a bigger difference in this piece, right? And and so I hope to hear you in the future then.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for to both of you. Thank you. All right. Great performance. our next performer, Jonathan, his name is in. So let's get him in. There we go. That was so useful. And lots of insight. How did you manage to put so much information into only 30 minutes? That was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, that piece is so huge, and there's so much to say.
Right.
And so I mean,
it's one of the toughest pieces out there to play. Right.
Oh, so worthwhile though.
Yeah, it is. All right, Jonathan, let me unmute you and let us know when you can hear us. All right. Hi, Jonathan. Can you hear and see us?
Hello.
Hi. Jonathan? Can you hear us? I have a feeling that he's not hearing us. Oh, you can. Okay, cool. All right. Well, leave it up to you guys.
Alrighty.
All right.
Very nice to meet you, Jonathan.
Hi, I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so what do you want to play today?
Liszt's Transcendental Etude 9.
Okay.
Record
Number what?
9.
Oh, okay. Got it. That piece is quite long. Do you want to play the whole thing, or do you want to play a portion of it?
I can play up to a certain section, yeah. And stop
Sure,
there.
yeah.
Okay.
It'll be up to you. I tend to be a little bit nitpicky, so we may not be able to cover the entire piece. I'm just telling you first. Okay, so
Yeah, sure.
play as much as you want. And
Okay, I'll stop at a section.
Okay, fantastic. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, okay. I think, I mean, technically speaking, you have no troubles with this piece, right? And I think this transcendental etude is not exactly like the other ones, right? It's so much more heartfelt, you know, it's so loving, right? And it's almost like Liszt is really is delicately pouring his heart out for maybe the love of his life, or maybe just another girl he wants to swoon, right? So I think that's the prevailing thing, right? Now we need to do a little bit of sort of score study at this point, right? Now Liszt, especially in this period, Liszt writes a lot of directions, right? And we can tell a lot by his writing too, right? Now he writes this as andantino, right? A little bit slower than walking speed, let's say, right? Like a little walking speed, right? So we know it's fairly forward, right? The other thing is it's 6/4, right? It's not necessarily 6/8. So it's not necessarily like a danceable thing, right? So now just from those two hints, we know that it's it's always going to feel like it's moving forward. Two, it's not really a dance, right? So we could really just looking by the first phrase, right? I think it's very much like you're speaking, right? Maybe you're not speaking to someone. Maybe you're speaking to yourself, or you're speaking to your heart, right? So I think the first thing we need to do is we need to really conceive of how far how far our voice extends to, right? So you have right? We're going from here to here, right? That's our first sort of sweep. So if we take too much time here, then we're kind of lessening this sort of opening up of a cabinet, right? Imagine you're about to go out to party, right? And you need a fresh pair of beautiful clothes like you do, right? And you open your closet, right? And already your mind is so happy, right? You're excited. So you do this, right? But what if you were to open it like this, right? It's not as natural. And I think this first thing is not, it's not to say that what you did was like bad or anything, right? But I think this is one whole sweep. Right? It should be one sort of motion up, right? And then right? So it's actually and this is very Lisztian actually, right? He has this sort of very mysterious, sort of very sort of ominous beginning before something not glamorous, but something, you know, completely magical and almost spiritual in a way. It's so beautiful, right? So I think in the very beginning, we need to think that it's still moving forward. When we get here, and then we keep going to here. And then this changes color. What's that note? Yeah. Okay. Can we try it
Sure.
from the beginning? Just a little bit more forward. Okay, good. Yeah, just a tiny thing. When we have this, we have two notes in between that are not exactly part of the da 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 da, right? Right. So if we were to take this rhythm very strictly, right? We have a triplet, and then two notes, and then triplet, right? So I want a little bit more of a difference between it, right? So that it's not just right, because then it's kind of like it's kind of like we have a little bit of like imagine if I'm a magician, right, and I have a wand, right, and instead of doing this, alakazam, right? I kind of do this, right? So like I want this to be a little bit more of a sort of that. Wow, right? So maybe the entire, it's still one motion, but the dip is a little bit more of this sort of spinning before it goes up. So right? And again, go to the long notes. The long notes are our destination. Ya, ya da da ya da 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 dee, da dee. Okay, can we try one more time? Okay, that's a little bit better. I still feel a little bit of a clunkiness to it, and I think it's because you wait a little bit too long for this. Right. I think this should move quite right. Give us the direction. Right. Instead of stop, right? Because then you're you're demarcating it rather than something. It's almost as if you've had a little bit too much to drink, right? And you're kind of just a little bit lazy, right? And you're hazy, but you're comfortable, right? There's nobody around. You're just, you're kind of dancing with yourself. Okay, one more time. Go on. Very good. Okay. All right. So what's the difference between this part versus what's the difference between these two? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. It could be major and minor. I want you to think of it as a feeling, right? This is a little bit more open, right? You're reaching, right? You're hopeful for something. But this is disappointment, right? This is disappointment, right? And that's why Liszt writes a big crescendo to here, right? And then nothing really here. And then, right? And actually, he builds up to something, right? Because we're so soft, right? In this deceptive cadence. But wait. Right? So it's kind of that, like, but wait, right? There's more. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we try from the espressivo here? Okay, good. Okay, fantastic, Jonathan. Now, we need to think about, okay, because in this entire piece, there's a lot of there's a lot of cadenzas like this, right? There's a lot of right? And it's just a lot of these things, right? So if we take so much time every time that we go up and then down, it's always going to feel like, oh man, there's another one. There's another one, another one, another one, right? So I want you to think of it this way, right? When we have that, but more, there's wait, there's more, this thing, right? This is our first flourish. I would probably start a little bit softer. Sorry. And really kind of go all the way to this B. And then this is probably not that loud, right? So we have a progression from this to this to this, right? So in a sense, I don't want you to go all the way to this note, but I want you to, right? And then keep it going, moving forward. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Sorry. And then from here, this you can go a little bit more forward too, right? The first one we were saying, okay, it doesn't have to be so loud, it doesn't have to be so quick, right? So then we can make that contrast because now we have more feathery stuff up here. Okay, can we try that? Just to make a little distinction between this cadenza, right? Because this ultimately ends in again, disappointment. This starts disappointing, but it goes even further, right? And it ends in sort of, right? Then it kind of starts in hope, right? It ends in hope rather than hopelessness, okay? Can we try right from here? Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, I think from my end, it sounds much more natural because we didn't think of these runs as mere, okay, I need to play this fast, I need to play this slow, right? Rather, we thought in terms of character, right? This run started from a place of intrigue, led to hopelessness. Then the next run started from a point of that hopelessness into hope. And then from here, right? This is excitement, building, 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 right? Up until this grand gesture, right? And then more notes, and then and now we're in flats. Okay, so here, why don't we? Because I think you know what to do with these runs. I want to hear a little bit of the theme, okay? Because I think there's a very interesting. I think Liszt wrote this theme very interestingly. It's not on the downbeat, right? We start really on just this. Sorry, right? So we have this sort of. It's a very flowing thing, right? But we start in the middle, we interrupt it. Right? And just a tiny thing, every time you do this, right? If you go really too early on this thing, we never hear this. Right? We need to hear the end of that phrase. Right? This is part of the end. It's not part of the beginning of the next. So, okay? But yeah, I want to hear a little bit more of that sort of whimsical interruption. Right? So I would probably like make sure that the pedal is kind of open. No, sorry, it's clean before that. And then same thing, right? So that we hear that there is a space. Okay, so maybe from here. Okay, beautiful. Okay, now because we have a new space inside, we need to be even critical, right? We have to be more critical of the left hand, right? Your left hand has to, right? And really this, now actually, see, I defend my point. Liszt knew what he was doing, right? Liszt is a genius here, right? Why did he not write a chord here, right? Why did he only break this one? Because he wanted the ear to always listen to that. So in a sense, you hear a roll, this, rather than just silence this, right? So I'd rather you feel that this left hand goes towards this note. That. Now the last time, because he goes even further, you can have a demarcation. Right? And that's sort of it's the point in the phrase where it turns, right? This is all going in one direction. But then this note, right? That goes into a completely different, magical new world, right? So I want you to try that one more time from here. Right? And be very conscious of how this left hand moves. Takes all the energy and swishes it to the right hand. Much better, much better, much better. Just remember this. Don't rush the end of it, right? Right? You have so much time, right? And he writes basically to relax here, right? Right? There's no excitement here. It's just, right? You're in a boat and your hand is out in the water and you're feeling the surface of the water, right? It's effortless. A lot of this is completely effortless, right? I don't want you to think that you need, right? It's not something that you need to, like strike a flame and then burn something, right? So I want you to feel completely effortless, to the point that when we're at the next phrase, right? Now we're even more breathless, right? To be a little bit more expressive. One more time and I won't stop you. And we'll go a little bit further. Okay, beautiful. Okay, I know we're running out of time, and I would love to hear more of it. But I'll leave you with this one tip of advice. Okay, when we play romantic pieces, right? Liszt, Chopin, Schumann, Brahms, all these things, right? Now we're always constantly told rubato, right? Now, rubato essentially means, flexibility, right? But it also kind of, I think the literal, the literal translation of rubato is to rob, right? To steal, right? But in this case, we steal time, right? So we take time away from here, but as, good Samaritans, good citizens, we have to put it back, right? So whatever you do here, we have to realize if you're stretching this phrase, you'll have to eventually speed things up so that we're back on track, right? Because if you keep taking and keep taking and keep taking and keep taking, well, then you're just a bad person. All right, okay? And that basically means it's gonna drag and drag and drag, okay? So I want you to always remember this is in a it's in 6/4, right? So that means it's always gonna feel like there's like a wheel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? That it's always moving forward, right? And it's in andantino, right? So there's always a forwardness to it. So you can definitely take as much time as you need for these things, right? And but I'm just saying sometimes, like when we got to the top, this is actually all the same thing, right? It's just down an octave. So there's nothing more to be said thematically, right? So this is a good chance for us to, okay, now let's keep moving again, right? So that we can take time somewhere else, right? And then put it back somewhere else, right? And I think that's gonna help pace this piece a little bit better, right? Because my first impression was, okay, yeah, he has really good technique, and he can play all these runs, great, right? But then what was the next layer? I couldn't really remember the next layer after that, right? And in order to, really affect people in the second layer, we need to keep in mind phrasing and how the story unfurls, right? And half of that is how we pace this piece, right? Like, where do we take time and where do we put it back, right? And then there's this age-old saying that if you smelled all the flowers on your way home, you would never get home, right? Because there's just way too many flowers, right? So we need to pick which ones are the most beautiful, the ones that will make you stop in your tracks just to smell it, right? Okay? It was a pleasure listening to you. I'm sorry we're out of time, but I look forward to hearing you again. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jonathan. That was a beautiful, beautiful list. Beautiful lesson. I think our audience also enjoyed it since they're asking for a 10-hour masterclass again, like last time. Unfortunately, we don't have that much time. But Alvin, that was so great. Thank you so much, for being so generous with your time, and sharing your knowledge with us. I learned a lot along with the students and the
thank you.
Oops, I didn't turn on my video. I just realized. There we go. Right. So yeah, it's a really pleasure to have you.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for our audience who want to learn more about Alvin, can go to his website. alvinzoo.com.
Sure.
Is that correct? Right?
Yeah, sure.
Follow him,
or my Facebook, or my Instagram, or my WeChat. All those are fine.
All right. Yeah. All right. All of them. Follow Alvin. And we have more masterclasses coming up in May. And I think we have one more this week with Shang Chen this Friday.
Fantastic.
And then I think that's it, right? And we have the showcase May 1st, 7 p.m. Ooh, we have a lot of young brilliant young pianists out there. And of course, our audience, please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to see more of these contents, not just the masterclass, everything piano related. Piano League, the pianoleague.com/masterclass.
The one-stop shop.
Right, right, for everything. So that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. Happy practicing, and we'll see you next time. Right? Let me just
be
play
safe.
Right, be safe. Let me just play the promo video to end our episode.
Alrighty.
All right.